Have you ever sat in your car, maybe at a red light, on your way to a job that's fine but not great, and looked at the person in the SUV next to you? You see the shiny paint, the designer sunglasses, the way they seem so unbothered, and you wonder, what do they know that I don't? Or maybe you're scrolling through your feed and you see someone from your old high school posting from a beach in Maui, while you're just happy your checking account finally hit 4 digits after the rent cleared. It's a weird feeling, right? It's that nagging suspicion that the American dream isn't dead, but maybe the password was changed and nobody sent you the update. The truth is, making $100,000 a year in America today, a number that used to be the gold standard of making it, can often feel like you're just one transmission failure or one medical bill away from being broke. We've been sold this idea of what rich looks like, but the numbers, the actual data from the Federal Reserve and the IRS, they tell a completely different story. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the actual wealth tiers in the United States. We aren't just talking about who has a fancy car, we're talking about who actually owns their time. And I guarantee you, some of these numbers are going to make you do a double take. My name is Troy, and I spend way too much time thinking about wealth distribution and the hidden mechanics of the American economy. If you're someone who feels like you're working harder than ever, but the goalposts for financial freedom keep moving further away, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Look, here's the thing. When most people hear the word rich, they think of private jets, 5-car garages, and a life of constant luxury. But that's the Hollywood version. The reality of wealth in America is much more subtle, and honestly, a lot more interesting. Most people have absolutely no idea where they actually stand on the financial ladder. They see someone with expensive toys and assume they're at the top, while the actual millionaires in this country are often driving 10-year-old Fords and living in the same modest house they bought in the 90s. We have to stop focusing on income and start focusing on net worth. Income is what you bring in, but net worth is what you keep. It's the difference between looking rich and being wealthy. And if you want to climb that ladder, you have to understand the rungs. So let's get into the deep dive of what it actually takes to be in the top 50, 10, and even the top 1% in the US today. Let's start with income, because that's the metric everyone uses to keep score. The median household income in America right now is sitting around $83,730. Now, stop and think about that. Half of the households in this country make more than that, and half make less. If you're clearing 84 grand, you are officially above average. But let's be real for a second. In a world of surging gas prices, $2,500 a month apartments, and the rising cost of literally everything, $83,000 doesn't exactly feel like you're winning. It feels like you're treading water. Now, to crack the top 25% of earners, your household needs to bring in about $150,000 a year. This is where you start to see some breathing room. This is the demographic that can actually contribute to a 401k and maybe a Roth IRA without feeling like they're sacrificing their grocery budget. But even here, there's a trap. This is the level where lifestyle creep is most dangerous. This is where people start thinking, I make $150K, I should be driving a European luxury SUV. And suddenly that breathing room is gone, swallowed up by a $900 a month car payment and a higher insurance premium. When we move up to the top 10%, the threshold jumps to about $251,136. Now we're talking about real money, right? But remember, this is often power couple territory. Two professionals, maybe a nurse and a middle manager, or two teachers with side hustles. While $250K sounds like a lot, if that family is living in a high cost of living area like Seattle or New Jersey, and they're paying down $100,000 in student loan debt, they might still feel surprisingly middle class. This is the fundamental problem with the American high-income mindset. We've been conditioned to think that a high salary equals wealth. It doesn't. Income is just a tool. It's like the fuel in a car. You can have a high-performance engine that guzzles gas, but if you don't have a destination or a map, you're just burning fuel in the driveway. The top 1% of income earners start at about $659,000 per year. At this level, for an individual, it's about $450,000. This is where income starts to become less of a daily stressor and more of a wealth generation engine. But even here, and I've seen the data, there are people making $500,000 a year who have a negative net worth because they're addicted to the appearance of success. If income is the fuel, net worth is the car and the destination combined. Net worth is the only number that matters because it represents your freedom. It's the simple math of net worth equals total assets minus total liabilities. Everything you own, your house, your 401k, your brokerage account, minus everything you owe, your mortgage, your student loans, that credit card balance you're totally paying off next month. The median net worth in the U.S. is about $193,000. That's the middle of the pack. But here's a statistic that should honestly keep you up at night. Half of all American households under the age of 35 have a net worth below $39,000. Think about that. $39,000 isn't even a down payment on a starter home in most U.S. cities anymore. It's barely the price of a mid-sized sedan. This is why the wealth gap feels so personal for younger generations. They're starting the race 10 miles behind the starting line because of debt. To get into the top 25% of net worth, you need about $659,000. This is the safety zone. At this level, you likely have some equity in a home and a decent balance in your S&P 500 index funds. You're not rich in the sense that you can quit your job tomorrow, but you could survive a layoff without losing your mind. The real shift happens at the top 10%. To join this club, you need a net worth of roughly $1.9 million. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Once you hit the nearly $2 million mark, the math of money changes. At this level, if you have $1.5 million invested in the market, even a modest 7% return is over $100,000 a year in growth. Your money is now working a full-time job, so you don't have to. This is the threshold of financial independence. And the top 1%? To get there, you're looking at a net worth of at least $11.6 million. Some estimates even put it at $13 million. The gap between the top 10% and the top 1% isn't just a step, it's a different planet. We're talking about a $10 million difference. At the 1% level, you aren't just comfortable, you are a capital allocator. You aren't working for a paycheck, you're managing systems that generate wealth across generations. Here's where I get a little frustrated, because it doesn't have to be this way for so many people. Most Americans stay stuck in the bottom 50% not because they don't work hard. Americans are some of the hardest working people on earth, but because they're playing the wrong game. If you're in that bottom 50%, you're in survival mode. Money is a source of anxiety. It's about, can I afford the repair on the car, or will I have enough for the electric bill? The tragedy here is that when you're in survival mode, your brain literally shifts into short-term thinking. You can't think about a 401k when you're worried about Friday. But the only way out is to break that cycle by treating your savings like a non-negotiable bill. As you move into the top 25%, you enter stability mode. This is where the American dream used to live. You have a mortgage, a couple of cars, and a 401k match from your employer. But this is also where most people plateau. Why? Because they mistake stability for success. They stop pushing. They get comfortable. They buy the bigger house because the bank said they could afford the payment, not realizing that the mortgage is literally Latin for death pledge. They're one bad economic cycle or one Federal Reserve interest rate hike away from falling back down a tier. The jump from the top 25% to the top 10% requires a total software update of your brain. You have to stop being a consumer and start being an investor. Most people in the top 25% are focused on their credit score so they can borrow more money to buy things. People in the top 10% are focused on their asset allocation, so their money can buy them more time. Here's a math example that illustrates this. Let's take two people, both 30 years old, both making 100K. Person A, the consumer, takes their 10K bonus and puts a down payment on a $60,000 SUV. They have a $900 payment for 72 months. Person B, the investor, takes that same 10K, puts it in a Roth IRA, maxed out, and a brokerage account tracking the S&P 500. They continue to drive their paid-off 2018 Toyota. Fast forward 30 years, person A has gone through 5 different SUVs and essentially has nothing to show for it but a history of monthly payments. Person B, assuming an average 8% return, has turned that initial 10K into over $100,000, and that's just from one bonus. If they did that every year, they're retiring in the top 10%. Same income, totally different life. It's not about the 100K, it's about the discipline to not spend it. You might be thinking, Troy, that's great for the 10%, but what about the 1%? How do you get to $11 million? The top 1% are playing an entirely different sport. While the middle class is worried about their checking account and their checking versus savings balance, the ultra-wealthy are focused on tax optimization and leverage. In America, we have a tax system that rewards people who own things and punishes people who work for things. If you earn a $200,000 salary, W-2 income, you're going to get hit with the highest tax brackets. But if you own a business or real estate that appreciates by $200,000, you don't pay a dime in taxes until you sell. And even then, you're paying capital gains tax, which is significantly lower than income tax. The top 1% also understand the difference between bad debt and good debt. Bad debt is a credit card at 24% interest used to buy a pair of sneakers. Good debt is a low-interest loan used to buy an apartment complex that pays you rent every month. The 1% use debt as a tool to acquire more assets. They're not afraid of it. They're masters of it. But here's the most important secret of the 1%. They have escaped the time for money trap. If you're a lawyer making $400 an hour, you're doing well, but you're still a high-end worker. If you stop working, the money stops. The 1% own wealth-generating systems. They own the law firm. They own the patent. They own the shares in the companies that you buy products from every day. Their income is decoupled from their time. That is the ultimate goal of the try-hard investor. So where do you go from here? Whether you're at $4,000 in your checking account or $400,000 in your 401k, the strategy for moving to the next level is always the same. You have to change your relationship with the dollar. If you're in the bottom 50%, your mission is defense. You need an emergency fund of at least 3 to 6 months of expenses. You cannot build a skyscraper on a swamp. You need a solid foundation. Kill your high-interest debt. Credit cards are a financial cancer. Use the debt snowball or debt avalanche method, but get them out of your life. If you're in the top 50% to 25%, your mission is automation. You need to be maxing out your employer's 401k match. That is literally free money. After that, look at a Roth IRA. In 2026, the tax-free growth of a Roth is the closest thing to a legal cheat code the U.S. government gives us. Stop looking at your credit score as a way to buy toys and start looking at it as a way to secure low-interest rates for investment properties. If you're in the top 25% to 10%, your mission is optimization. This is where you stop just saving and start investing aggressively. You need to diversify. Don't just rely on your job. Look into low-cost index funds that track the total stock market. Start thinking about your tax loss harvesting. This is the stage where you should be more worried about your effective tax rate than your gross income. The mindset shift. Stop comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. Social media has made us all feel broke because we're comparing our actual bank balances to someone else's leased lifestyle. The wealthiest people I know don't look wealthy. They look like regular people who are very, very calm. At the end of the day, the numbers don't lie, but they also don't have to be your destiny. Being rich in America isn't about the number on your paycheck. It's about the gap between your income and your ego. If you can keep your expenses low while your income grows, you are on the path to the top 10%. If you can take that surplus and put it into assets that grow while you sleep, like the S&P 500 or real estate, you are on the path to the top 1%. It's not a mystery, and it's not just for people who were born into it. It's a series of disciplined choices made over a long period of time. Look, I know it's hard. I know the system feels rigged sometimes, and the Federal Reserve's decisions can feel like they're designed to hurt the little guy. But you can't control the Fed. You can't control the economy. You can only control your personal economy. You can choose to be a consumer, or you can choose to be an investor. One leads to a life of chasing the next paycheck. The other leads to a life of true freedom. I want to see you climb that ladder. I want to see you move from survival to stability to wealth. But it starts with facing the real numbers and deciding that average isn't good enough for you. My name's Troy. This is Try Hard Investor, and I'm here to help you navigate this crazy financial landscape. If this breakdown opened your eyes or gave you a new perspective on where you stand, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. Tell me, which tier are you aiming for this year, and what's the one thing holding you back? I read as many as I can, and I'd love to hear your story. Now, stop scrolling, go look at your net worth, and start building your system. I'll see you in the next one.